Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the MCAG Governing Board to order. At this time, it's 3 o'clock. May we please have roll call?
Director Spinoza, Director Smith, Director McDaniel.
Let them say present.
Present.
Director Smith?
Present.
Sorry. Director McDaniel,
Present.
Director Moran, Director Nagy,
Here.
Director Nelson, Director Pereira,
Present.
Director Silvera,
Present.
Director Yanis,
Here.
Chair Pedroza.
Here. Okay, next we'll have an invocation, and I've asked Stacy Cooley from our office to lead us with that, and then after that, I'm going to ask Mr. Nagy to lead us in the pledge.
Hold on 1 second. Mic on? Okay. Thank you for this honor.
Please bow your heads and hearts with me today. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, we come before you today and we thank you for our daily blessings and for your faithfulness and love. We pray like King David did in Psalms 51, create in us a clean heart and renew a right spirit within us. Do not cast us from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from us, but restore to us the joy of our salvation and uphold us with your Spirit. Lord, we invite you into this meeting today and ask that your peace, the peace that surpasses all understanding, be evident in these chambers. We ask that you guide and direct the board members, our community leaders, as they make these important decisions on our transportation, housing, waste management, capital improvements, and all other items that will be discussed today. Father, we ask that you give them the courage to hold tight to their convictions and to safeguard the future for our families and our community members. Grant them the negotiation skills necessary to work with all of our stakeholders, as well as state and federal partners and legislature, to ensure success with all of the projects that will benefit Merced County. We ask for your favor and grace as they work hard to accomplish the tasks that you have set before them. Lord, in the challenging moments, I ask that you provide the support that they need, whether it be a word of encouragement from a friend, a phone call from a relative, or an email from a trusted confidant. Whatever is needed in that moment to give them the confirmation they need to make those tough calls. Lord, I ask that you would speak to their hearts. I pray that you would protect each one of them and their families, and that you would provide for their needs so that they may focus on the issues facing our communities. We acknowledge our dependence on you and thank you for your promise that you will never leave us or forsake us. We thank you for today and ask that you guide our stumbling feet. In Jesus' precious and holy name we pray. Amen.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Director Nagy. Okay, item number 2 is the approval of the agenda. Do any of the directors or the executive director have any comments on the agenda? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we got McDaniel and Nagy. All in favor, say aye. Any opposite? Any opposed? All right, it passes. The next item is public comment. Public comment is open for anyone to speak on matters within the purview of MCAG, and comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have anyone in the room today who would like to comment?
How do I start with that? I just start right here.
Good afternoon. My name is Mitchell Vinciguerra. I'm a field representative with the NorCal Carpenters Union. I'm based out of Local 152 in Manteca, but my area covers San Joaquin, Stanislaus, Merced, Amador, Calaveras, and Tuolumne counties. I'm here today to speak to you guys about Assembly Bill 2011, a state law that went into effect July 1st of this year. It will provide streamlined, CEQA-exempt review for certain affordable and mixed housing projects. The bill can help generate more affordable homes quickly. It'll provide living wage jobs for local residents, increase your tax base, and help localities meet their RHNA goals. From my research, it looks like Merced County needs to build about 23,000 units over the next 8 years, which is no small feat. To assist the cities and the counties, the NorCal Carpenters Union has created a template application for you to adopt. This application template covers all the requirements of Assembly Bill 2011, which can be quite complex, and turns them into a straightforward checklist that has been reviewed and approved by our legal department. I'm more than willing to meet up with anybody to, provide more information about Assembly Bill 2011, and I could also hand out those checklists. And especially like the city of Merced, it looks like you guys need like 10,000 units, and I've reached out to the planning department there. I haven't got an email back yet though. So I'll leave my information, and please reach out to me.
I'm sorry, could I get your last name again?
Vince Aguera.
And if you have handouts, there's a basket there, right to your right. I don't know what's in there right now, but if you leave it there, we will distribute. Yep, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone else?
Hello, Juan Martinez, United Way. Just wanted to mention earlier in this year, I had mentioned at one of the town hall meetings in Atwater that there was quite a bit of damage to the canal over off of Buhack with the Nitria, I believe is the name of the Nutra is the name of that critter. I ran the canal this morning and everything is repaired. It looks really, really nice, and I just want to say thank you. I had been wanting to mention it again, but has given it some time, but it looks really, really good. I actually kind of stomped on the dirt that was filled in to see how solid it was, and they did a really good job. So just want to say thank you, and the community and the kids around that area, thank you as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Do we have anybody from on Zoom who wishes? Okay. Then we'll move on to item number 4. Item 4 is reports and presentations. The first is the Citizens Advisory Committee report.
Mr. Chair, the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting for August was canceled in coordination with the chair due to a lack of quorum.
Thank you. And we'll have, next is the Caltrans report. We have Marlon. There we are. Good afternoon, Marlon.
Good afternoon, Madam Director and members of the governing board. I'll keep it very brief. Don't have too many updates from the Caltrans side of things today, but I do want to highlight some recent funding opportunities for the board's consideration. The first one being California Energy Commission, the Clean Transportation Program, innovative charging technologies for electric vehicles, medium and heavy duty electric vehicles. So this is a charging technologies program that is available for a couple more weeks. The deadline is September 8th, and there's $20 million available for heavy duty, medium electric vehicle charging applications. So this program information can be found on grants.ca.gov as well. We also have our Governor's Office of Planning and Research. We have a Regional Resilience Planning and Implementation Program call for applications. This is to address local, regional, and tribal climate resilience needs at a regional scale. There's $25 million available for this program. The deadline is the end of the month, actually August 29th. This is also on our state grants website. We also have our local technical assistance program. This is a grant writing workshop. So those who are interested in how to write a really good grant, this is a great workshop that we're actually holding a workshop next month. The information is on caltap.org. I can definitely share this information with the board as well. And also we have our recycling program call for applications, which is for rubberized pavement. Again, this is our Department of Resources Recycling, our partner agency. So there's $5.1 million available here. The deadline is September 13th. Local, state, and tribal agencies are eligible as well. This is also on our state grants website. And then lastly, we have our California Environmental Protection Agency hybrid and zero emission trucks and bus voucher incentives projects. We have a call for applications for that. This one's almost $600 million, but the deadline is at the end of the month. So if you're interested, this is also on our state grants website. I can share all this information with the board if you'd like further information on that. And just lastly, I would just like to mention regarding our Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program. This is a Caltrans grant program. We are getting ready to announce our awardees in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I believe by the end of the month. And then we'll be holding a grant workshop for the next round of Sustainable Transportation Planning grants. That also includes our Adaptation Planning Grant Program. So you'll be hearing more about our workshop coming out in the fall. So once we have a date settled, we'll definitely share that with the board as well. And I believe that concludes my Caltrans update. I'm happy to take any questions, thoughts, concerns, and thanks for the time, Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions for Marlon? Director Pereira.
Hi, Marlon. When you were talking about the rubberized asphalt program, which grant program was that?
The rubberized, that is from the Department of Resources Recycling and Recovery program.
Okay. California?
Yes,
Okay.
It's a state program.
Thanks.
And I can share that information with you as well.
Okay.
Anybody else? Director Silvera, nothing? Okay. If possible, Marlon, can you send that information over to us? I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Next we have a state legislative update from Politico. Stacy is going to introduce our guests.
Yes, I'm happy to introduce you to Kiana Valentine and Chris Lee, both with Politico Group, partners with Politico Group. As you recall, about this time last year, we started talking about the need to have more of a presence in Sacramento. We went through a procurement process, and this board authorized the contract to enter with Politico for state legislative advocacy and legislative support and advocacy services. And so we've been working with Chris, and I say we, I think almost everyone on our team in some way have been working with Chris and Kiana over the last 8 months on a variety of things. And we have long since the beginning said, we're gonna schedule time to get you to come and meet the board. And between budgets and everything else that everyone was working on, here we are. It only took us a few minutes. So I'm gonna turn it over. I invited them to come, not just to meet you, but to also just talk about what we've been working on and what's going on in Sacramento. So the floor is yours, but let me make sure I turn on the podium. There you go. You should be good.
Okay. Can you hear me? Great. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Kiana Valentine, and here with my colleague Chris Lee, as Stacy mentioned, both partners at Politico Group, which is a full-service public affairs firm in Sacramento. The firm has been around since 1970, and we are we like to say small but mighty firm. We're about 5 people in total, and we really focus on a specific set of issues that we like to excel at in a policy space. So it's really infrastructure focused. Chris and I have worked on local government issues almost our entire careers. I know former Supervisor Mike Nelson from my time at CSAC, Supervisor McDaniel, and many others I have met or interfaced with throughout the years because of that previous local government experience, and it's near and dear to both of our hearts. Chris and I have worked on transportation, housing, regional governance issues almost 18 of my 20 years. That's how long I've been working on that. And so I'm just really thrilled to finally get a chance to be here in person and get a chance to interact with you face to face and let you know what we've been up to, and of course take any questions or comments that you might have. I first wanted to start by talking about what we've been focusing on over the past 8 months. when we sat down with Stacy and your executive and staff team to talk about the many things we can do under a state advocacy contract, we listed out a half a dozen or so things, priority projects, programs, things y'all are working on, and said, where do we want to get started first? Where should we make the first few months of our focus? And we decided the most bang for our buck at that point was really working with the Newsom administration, given their outsized role in influencing how state transportation and housing dollars are accessed by MCAG. Chris and I both hail from the San Joaquin Valley. I was born and raised in San Joaquin County. Chris was born and raised, well, not born, but raised in Clovis. And so I think we have experienced what many have also experienced, which is a misunderstanding, perhaps, of the San Joaquin Valley and Sacramento. We have personally lived that. And I think in my experience working on San Joaquin Valley issues, there is a perception that it's, at least in the transportation space, about widening and capacity and moving more freight and cars. And while that is part of it, there's also a lot more going on in Merced County and across the San Joaquin Valley. And so we really wanted to make sure to spend our first concerted effort educating and providing the administrators, the funding decision makers, with information about the plethora of investments going in across Merced County. So of course that includes transit and the high-speed rail station coming to the county. We are learning a lot about YARTS and the unique challenges that faces, providing transit service multi-county to a federal park, right? Affordable housing. The gentleman just brought up that I think the RENA cycle, the most current RENA cycle, has a lot of challenges for every city and county across the state in terms of providing housing for your citizens. The inland port is something that we talk about a lot. Economic development, and then of course the development of your sustainable community strategy and how you're going to meet the state mandated greenhouse gas emissions reductions targets, which get harder and harder as the cycles go on, right? I'm already speaking too much about all of the policy stuff. I get really excited about the things we're doing on your behalf, so let me try to rein it in really quick. So in order to do that, we have done, or getting ready to do, 3 major events. The first was just Chris and I getting a chance to go into the Capitol and meet with all of your state elected officials. There were some challenges early on that MCAG staff weren't able to join us for that, but we went over there and we drop in. Whenever we're in the Capitol, we'll pop into their offices and just say, hey, we want them to see us as a resource, an extension of MCAG staff in Sacramento, so that if they have a question, they know they can call us and we can get in touch with you all and facilitate a flow of information. And then we had a full day lobby day in Sacramento where Stacy and Elizabeth did join us. And we met with leadership from the Federal Highway Administration, Caltrans, the California Transportation Commission, the Office of Planning and Research, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and the Strategic Growth Council. That one was perhaps that was my favorite one of the day, because they do a lot across multi-issues, and I think they were less aware of all the different things going on in Merced County. And so there was a lot of light bulbs going off, and we've since talked with their staff about, oh, hey, here's this grant opportunity, right? Is this a good thing for Merced to look at because of what they have going on? So it's facilitating really great relationships in that regard. And then we met with CARB, too, to talk about the RTP SCS. And then we're getting excited and ready for Caltrans Director Tony Tavares' visit to Merced County on August 31st, fast approaching. We've been on bi-weekly calls, getting everything underway. I understand there was maybe a test run of the tour route earlier today, and so we'll continue to work out the kinks and make sure that that gets executed. And the goal there is for the director, the utmost decision maker within the department, right, to truly understand the multimodal investments going in across Merced County. It's not just investments in State Route 99 or whatnot, what I think the perception can be sometimes. So that's what we've been up to the past 8 months. Among other things, we've been talking about bills in the state budget, and there's a lot going on with transit funding, and we can get into that if you have questions about that. And then Chris is going to chat a little bit about what we have planned coming up.
Yeah, great, everyone. Chris Lee. As Kiana mentioned, came from CSAC, have a lot of county experience, worked with a lot of you around the board, but also have a lot of experience living in the Central Valley, and so really excited for our representation of MCAG. As Kiana mentioned, our focus this year really was on heightening that profile and starting to build those relationships with the state agencies. But I think as we look into next year, especially with a lot of the hot issues that are coming up, we've got a great opportunity with your legislative delegation to start to focus a little bit on legislation. So investigating opportunities for sponsored legislation, and also serving as a really valued resource on providing the Merced County perspective on these statewide policy changes that are happening. And as Kiana mentioned, establishing those relationships with the legislators so that they call us and get the input before they're voting on a bill is really how we think public agencies especially can be most influential in the legislative process. Some of the hot topics that you're all well aware of: transit funding. There was a very significant allocation of transit funding that can be used for either capital facilities or vehicles or operations. It's SB 125 in the budget, but that's an ongoing issue, and we've been highlighting for your delegation the issues with YARTs and how do we have sustainable ongoing funding for the level of service that we currently have, much less expanding transit to shift folks from driving. The future of transportation funding as we shift to electric vehicles, potentially looking at a road charge. What are the significant implications to the funding streams that you rely on there? There's a huge focus on regional planning, your RTP Sustainable Community Strategy, and how that ties into climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. There's been a lot of legislation really attempting to bind locals into how they comply with these state goals. And so providing that on-the-ground experience, what are the practical implications, is something where we really want MCAG's voice to be elevated in the conversation. And then finally, as Kiana already mentioned, this is a huge housing element cycle for everyone. That 23,000 number that the gentleman with the carpenters mentioned had my eyes popping, and I'm sure as you all have your jurisdictions move into implementation, turning that into real units, the infrastructure investments that's needed. We were working with your federal partners, soliciting the items for your DC lobby trip and hearing about the water infrastructure needs and connecting you with the State Water Resources Control Board for some of those pre-meetings. I think there's a lot of opportunities there at the state level as well. So excited as you move into that housing element implementation to look for alternatives and options that we can help advance at the statewide level. So, and then lastly, we're going to talk about one topic that we couldn't resist speaking about before we wrap our presentation and see if there are any questions.
For all the talk about multimodal investments, we have spent a lot of time on State Route 99 because it is that important. And in fact, as I have learned over the last few years, working on behalf of the three-county Finish the 99 Coalition, Madera, Merced, and Tulare County, those multimodal investments, the transit, the high-speed rail, don't work without the investments in 99. They are a critical component and they are combined, and one cannot be done without the other. So yes, you all are doing the multimodal investments, and yes, the state needs to finish State Route 99. So I've been working, this is I think year 3, we've been together working on the coalition, and as Chris mentioned, we would be remiss not to at least highlight the ongoing work. I think we, together, the 3 counties have made tremendous headway on that project. Again, Merced County's county-specific advocacy, Tulare's specific advocacy, Madera, the 3 of you all meeting with state administrators, the legislature, talking about everything you're doing across housing, land use, transportation, economic development is giving policymakers and decision makers a more comprehensive understanding of how 99 fits in. And this isn't just merely 99 for 99's sake, right? It's not just expand it to 5 lanes throughout and we're not going to invest in all the transit and all of those things. And so we have seen 2 of the Tulare projects almost get fully funded. We're waiting for the ITIP to come out later. We're working on design and environmental for the Madera projects. As you are aware, the Merced projects are the sticky wicket, though, right? They are in more of the imaginative phase, if you will, right? We're looking forward to getting involved with Caltrans on the multimodal corridor study that is getting just underway. I'll look forward to a report from the 3 counties on how that kickoff meeting went last week. And so, yeah, every single project funding round, we're strategizing on how to present the best grant on behalf of the next project in line, and we're just ticking away. Slowly but surely, we've seen the dollars roll in and the progress move forward. And you know, I drive through Merced all the time and would really like to see those chutes go away and have 3 lanes throughout Merced County would be really fantastic. And so we're absolutely committed to that project and look forward to seeing it to come to fruition. So hopefully that wasn't too lengthy, Stacy. We do get to talking, so that's it.
You're used to me, so that's excellent. And Scott.
There's nothing compared to her or Scott, so you're good. Any questions?
No?
All right. Thank you very much. That was, we look forward to continued working with you and continued updates. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Wait, Lloyd had.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't have a question, but I have a comment.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
So I was waiting for the second ask, but anyways. So Caltrans is doing a study on what's called J59. So Highway 59 runs north and south through Merced. So it ends up out in the town of Snelling and stops. And then you have J59, which is LaGrange Road, goes all the way to, I guess you'd call it Jamestown. So Highway 108 that comes out of Modesto. And so they're doing a study to look at possibly taking that on as Highway 59. And so anyways, just so you know about it, so if you get asked or you have an opportunity to advocate, that'd be great.
Okay.
That's,
Vito's with us on it too.
yeah, Vito, and then Kathleen Half from Tuolumne County, because it's the 3 counties.
Okay.
Stanislaus, Merced, and Tuolumne.
Sounds good. We'll get educated on it.
All right.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. That was good.
All right. We are on item 6 is the consent calendar, which has 6 items and 2 JPA items. Oh, I'm sorry. Item 5 is information items. These items are included for informational purposes and will not be presented by staff unless board members have questions. Are there any questions for staff for item 5? Anybody from the public? Okay. Item 6 is the consent calendar, which has 6 MCAG items and 2 TJPA items. These items may be acted on with 1 vote unless specifically removed for separate consideration with a request from a member of the board, a member of staff, or a member of the public. Does any member of the board wish to pull any items for discussion on the consent calendar? Okay. Any member of staff? Anybody from the public? Okay. Is there a motion to take action on these items?
I'll move.
Moved by Director McDaniel. Is there
Silvera, second.
Silvera, second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we'll move on to action item, or number 7. Item 7 includes 1 action item. Item 7A is a request to authorize the executive director to execute an agreement for staff augmentation services with LSA. Elizabeth?
Thank you. Good afternoon, board. Thank you, Chair, for introducing my item. The action here is to request for augmented staffing services with LSA Consulting, but more specifically with a certain staff person in that agency. Her name's Christine Kai. We have a couple of big things going on at MCAG. I know most of you are familiar with kind of the discussion we've been having about reviewing our sustainable community strategy with CARB. You heard Kiana mention really quietly that we did meet with CARB in Sacramento, and part of it is that we're starting this process that could be long and painful, or it could be long and, you know, not too painful. So we have a couple of things going on, and particularly related to that. We have a new transportation model as well. So with these two processes, we're really needing augmented staff services with someone who specializes in these. We have staff that was kind of training on these, but we don't have experienced staff in-house for these two items. And Christine Kai, she was very recently the deputy director at Fresno COG and recently worked through the process with CARB to get their SCS approved. So she's uniquely qualified to really push us through this time period and to also update our model essentially from 2015 to 2023. So maybe that's a little more technical information than you want, but we have a couple of staff vacancies. We do have one person in process on the way, so I'm hoping to get staffed up, but this recommendation is to negotiate and allow the executive director to enter into a contract. The suggested budget is about 50% of what a senior planner would be, and we would agree upon specific services and a rate for this person. So that is the recommendation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Any questions from the public?
I have a question.
Shane, go ahead.
Thank you, Josh. Elizabeth, how long is this person going to be on staff as a consultant?
So the way we have it presented to you is with a fixed budget where we would have an hourly rate with a not to exceed amount. We're not really sure how long it would be. It's highly dependent on this review process with the ARB. It could be 3 months that we're reviewing with ARB, and I don't want to ask Stacy how long it took to approve the 2018 because I think that was much longer than 3 months. So I'm hoping more of the former. But in addition to this CARB process, there are a number of technical things. I would say that with our new model and kind of moving forward, we're kind of developing on the technical side. So it would be really great to have her on staff. So that's why we're requesting a dollar amount versus a period of time.
Got it. That makes sense. I guess my only response would be, I mean, I take it on faith that Ms. Kai is excellent and she has the expertise that you say she does, but I'd kind of like to make sure the agency is staying with the trained professional staff model and not, continuing to leak out projects and staff time to consultants, because it's always hard to bring it back in-house.
I appreciate the comment, and just to mention that we do have a staff hire in progress that would be on this very technical end. And so it is my goal as the, kind of division director in planning and programming to have technical staff. So I am definitely trying to build up our in-house staff. And there are some things where we need a consultant to, let's say, develop the models, but we do need someone in-house to interpret for us the models to make sure they're running the way we want them to. So I want to make sure that we have, the highly technical and, like the MCAG staff side developed as well.
And if I could just add, because I completely agree, Director Smith, that we're in, I want to say at this pickle, but we're in the situation of needing Ms. Kai's expertise, and I know Director McDaniel's worked with her. We have worked with her, I think, collectively for over 10 years. So I can definitely vouch for that. But I agree with you about having the in-house staff. I think that we're in this position because we used to depend on a consultant and an outside party completely to develop and completely work with our model, and that's how it was for years and years. For this last RTP, we worked with a firm to develop a model so that now it's our own and that we can have in-house staff to work with the data and work with the model in-house. So we're just in that period where we're still in a period of transition, and we're developing our team to be able to have that expertise, but we're not quite there yet. So we see Ms. Kai as a kind of a gap. And she feels a lot more like staff than a consultant because we've worked with her so closely in the Valley for so many years. And I can't say I'm not going to work on trying to also poach her to actually join us. That's also in the books. But I think you'll find us both very like-minded that, this is a temporary measure because we're in a very technical period. And between the gentleman that will be joining us hopefully in October and the training that we have ongoing, we should be in much better shape to not be as dependent on consultants this time in our next RTP review.
All right, very good. Thank you both.
Director McDaniel.
Sure, I'll speak on her behalf as well. I think Poach has been in our conversations a lot. The fact that when she left the Fresno COG, everybody was very excited. I think the whole valley was excited because she's the best at what she does. That's for sure. We're lucky to have her services.
Okay. Anybody else? Any comments or questions from the public? Okay, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Pereira and a second by Smith. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. Item 8 is discussion items. Item 8A is a staff presentation on the draft electric vehicle readiness plan, and I'll hand it over to Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, we're very happy to announce that the draft electric vehicle readiness plan is now open for public comment. This is the culmination of months of work between MCAG staff, our consultants at Willdan Energy Solutions, AIM Consulting, your local agency staff, and various stakeholder groups here in Merced County. I'd like to walk you through a bit of the draft today and then also touch on some of our outreach efforts. So first, the draft plan includes a review of existing conditions, including existing charger stations, broken down by type of charger, whether that's level 2 or DC fast charger. The next part of the plan talks about the review of jurisdictional compliance with state legislation, such as AB 1236 or AB 970. We are currently working on making sure that all jurisdictions are in compliance with this. We just passed the second to last step with everyone, and so now we're in the final phases. I'd like to call out Elsa Wright at the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. She's been a fantastic help with providing us some of the templates and some of the information so that we can ensure that all the jurisdictions will be caught up, and we're hoping to have that done by the end of this year. Now, the next part of the plan is the meat and potatoes. This is the identification of new locations. I want to stress this is not an implementation plan. This is a roadmap for a countywide system, and it is a long-term planning document. The sites identified represent recommendations, not formal programming. That will be the next step, along with figuring out how to secure funding to construct these sites. The different sites that we've identified are broken into about 4 different groups. The first group is the preferred locations, and because these are the easiest to deploy, they're in areas that the community frequents, they're on public land, and they were brought up to us by jurisdictional staff. These sites include places such as O'Banion Park and the new, soon-to-be constructed library in Dos Palos, the Los Banos Community Center, which will also have a DC fast charger considered for transit charging, the Livingston Sports Complex, which is right next to Livingston High School. That actually has 2 potential build-outs, one being more for DC fast chargers, the other for level 2, which would be more directed towards students and teachers. And the North Transit Hub in Merced, which is also going to be more on the level 2 side, targeting students at the UC or workers going to Mercy Hospital. I would like to point out that the staff report mentions the Al Goman Center in Gustine. That site was actually reevaluated, and it is still in Gustine. It is still at Schmidt Park. It's just been relocated from the north parking lot down to the south parking lot near the baseball diamonds. It's a larger lot that would be easier to build out, closer to the power lines. And after conversations with city staff, we realized it would be a better place due to some infamous migratory birds. The next group of sites are 3 recommended sites that we received through outreach. The first of which is the Dos Palos Y. This is a fantastic location at the junction of 152 and 33, which serve Dos Palos, commuters on the way to Los Banos, and of course all of the traffic on 152 either going over Pacheco or headed to 99. The one concern that we do have with this site is regarding grid capacity. There may need to be more investment to ensure that there's enough power to run the chargers. But that will be identified at a later date. We have talked with some of the power providers like MID, TID, and PG&E, but we determined that that would be best done on a project-by-project basis once we reach the implementation phase. The next community-sourced site is the community of Planada. We actually have 2 sites identified there later in the report, but Planada was mentioned especially because of being the last community on 140 before you go out into Mariposa and up to Yosemite. We believe that there's a significant potential for use of chargers in this community. The third recommended site from the community is Gustine Municipal Airport. We believe that it would be a good spot to be able to serve the general aviation and agricultural aviation customers, as well as when there are big events at the airport, such as the Gustine Fly-In. Now, the next two groups are both two different screening scenarios. These include a mix of private and public land because we're now looking at the county as a whole. This includes screening factors such as land use, proximity to existing chargers, population density, and NEVI eligibility funding factors, NEVI being the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Funding Program. We have broken down the county to the assessor parcel level, so this has an incredible level of detail. And if you go to the website right now, you can click on the image and it will take you to the Esri tool to be able to look at each parcel's score individually. If you would like more information on the screening factors, those are listed on pages 31 and 32 of the draft plan. So you may be thinking, why do we have two scenarios? This is because we know that Merced County is a perfect balance between urban and rural. And so we want to make sure that we're giving equal weight to the incorporated cities and in the unincorporated county. The first scenario is called the default scenario. This is more urban focus and is similar to what our consultants have done in other regions like Tulare County and the Los Angeles Metro. And the second scenario is called the rural scenario, which has a heavier emphasis on unincorporated areas and weights population density a little less strongly. In the default scenario, we noticed that there is a significant emphasis on areas like schools, churches, commercial areas, and we had about 3 to 5 sites recommended per city. However, we were very surprised to see that there was a significant list of unincorporated communities listed here, such as Santinella, El Nido, Planada, and actually Supervisor Pereira, District 4 did very well. Hilmar, Delhi, Stevenson, Winton in particular had 5 sites, and not to toot my own horn, but my hometown of Balico had 1 site even, so. In the rural scenario, we noticed a shift where it moved more towards favoring major employers such as Foster Farms, specifically the Collier Road facility in Delhi. And we noticed there was still that commercial emphasis, but more towards grocery stores in particular. So from here, I'd like to talk very briefly on outreach. We held our first stakeholder meeting on May 19th and our second last week on August 11th. We conducted a community survey and received 77 responses. Summary of the survey results is now up on the website if you'd like to take a look, but I can give you a couple of the key takeaways here. The lack of charging stations in Merced County is considered the main concern in EV adoption, followed by the cost of vehicles and the length of a charge. Responses also suggested that there may not be enough general knowledge about potential incentive or rebate programs, so staff thinks that there may be an opportunity in the future to do more outreach and education. We definitely want our citizens to be able to use these programs at the state and federal level, or if they're through a company like PG&E. The survey also identified commercial areas as the primary requested location for chargers, followed by parking lots, homes, and recreational areas. The plan will be open for public comment through September 1st, and we will be bringing the final plan to you on October 19th. There's no additional fiscal impact for the development of the final plan. We are well on budget for this project. With that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Okay, are there any questions?
I have just.
Yeah.
So Blake,
Yes.
this plan studies where would be optimal locations to put them.
That's correct.
Where does the funding come from to actually put them in?
So we have a few different funding sources we're looking at. CMAQ is one of the big ones that we can use. There is the NEVI program that I mentioned. This is the sort of the bulk of funding that we're going to be seeing from the federal government, especially on identified corridors like 152 is a special corridor that they want to see a ton of chargers on. We're also looking at different programs such as the CFI program. That's a new federal funding source. They just did their pilot a few months ago, and so we'll be aiming for the next cycle for that. We're also keeping an eye on any state funding that may become available, but some of the more flexible sources such as LTF would still be useful for this.
And would they be publicly owned, or like how would that would there be a contract with like a provider? How does that all work?
That is an excellent question. There's a breakdown of that in the report, and we essentially have been looking at 4 different types of ownership models. For the locations on public sites, we believe it would probably be best to go with a public owner, but in some cases, of course, if we're building with, say, commercial areas in mind, it might be better to partner with private owners. There's also different types of models that involve cloud ownership, and it gets into a bit of a mess there, but we're still exploring that, and that would of course be looked at more at a project level.
And so overall, this plan would make, I'm guessing, it would make these sites eligible for any of these type of grants. They have to be as part of the plan. Are they making that a requirement to maybe go after some of that federal money or state money? It has to be part of a plan?
For some of the funding sources, it's not necessarily required, but highly encouraged, and does make the projects much more competitive in that state funding or federal funding.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Director Yanez.
Yeah, just a quick question. Does the planning for this or the way before implementation, the distance between current chargers, does that play in any model?
Yes, that is one of our screening criteria, and so you'll notice, if you go into the map, you'll notice that in certain areas, like in Santinella, it wasn't necessarily weighted as hard because there are significant chargers already in Santinella, you know, at the Hotel Del Oro and at the gas stations. And so there was, for example, a few sites that were more heavily focused in Los Banos because it was the right distance away from the chargers in Santinella.
Okay, perfect. And again, I'm only thinking Harris Ranch, Santinella, you got some decisions to make, that kind of thing. So
Certainly,
thank you.
yes.
Anybody else?
Blake, thank you for the presentation. So my question is basically, how do you charge the chargers? Like, what's the model? Are we going to plug in the grid, solar cell, mix of both?
Well, there's a variety of ways that we could do it. Right now, the main way that we're looking at is connecting into the grid itself. There are a few sites that we do recommend going for solar. Specifically, both sites in Gustine actually are right next to the giant solar panels the city just put in. We think it would be good if we could link that in. There's areas such as the transit center we would like to see if we could try to do solar, but we also don't want to tear up the brand new transit center that was just finished, you know. But in some areas, especially like Dos Palos or Dos Palos Y, it would be more efficient to link into the grid, we think.
Does the grid exist up over Pacheco Pass, for example?
That is an excellent question.
I don't mean to play gotcha. I'm just curious how it's going to play out. And does that factor into whether a site's selected for building an EV charging station?
It affected it slightly, and it's mainly why we're looking more in the away from Pacheco Pass, yes, especially because there is not as much infrastructure out there, for example, and also why we're not looking farther down 140 from Planada because the infrastructure already exists.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, some of us are still driving back to Silicon Valley for business, and I think that at some point there really should be some charging apparatus up over Pacheco, because it doesn't seem like that train's going to be here anytime soon, so we're going to need to get over the pass. I just encourage the group to really think about finding a way to get charging capacity up there.
Of course. Actually, I don't know if you've seen, but there's some technology that's being sort of piloted abroad right now for charging lanes. And so that may be something we could look at on Pacheco Pass. It might be more fitting.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Yeah.
Blake? You know, on the Pacheco Pass, there's the Romero Visiting Center.
Yes.
And I know there's electricity there and there's plenty of space. So if you're looking for a site along the Pacheco Pass, that might be one that could be done.
Certainly, thank you.
And I think it's still in Merced County.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then, well, Scott asked a question about the who operates them, and I'll share it with them offline.
Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to add a little bit and make a clarification. So just to manage expectations, not to burst anyone's bubbles, but this is called our EV readiness plan, and we looked through a lot of different criteria to identify for the local agencies areas that might be suitable. I just want to kind of emphasize that the implementation, the ownership, the projects would be for each of your local agencies, and we'll work with them and assist them. As we talk through it, and I know Blake's really excited about it, I don't want y'all to think that MCAG is going to start building them all over the county, because that's not really something we're going to be able to do, but we're working with your local agencies so they can build them and trying to give them the resources to help. There isn't necessarily, we had a question from Atwater, does this mean I don't get this station? That's not what this is about. This is trying to help the agencies. They can put them, wherever you get your grant. This isn't a list of the only places they can go in the county. It's just to assist your agencies.
Just one comment, Elizabeth. Careful what you say there. We could always make MCAG do something else. All right.
I don't know if we could. Yeah, no, I can see that. We don't have land use authority, Director.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. 8B is Transportation Project and Funding Programs Update from Elizabeth.
Thank you. This item, I have to start with a couple of disclaimers. So you haven't seen from me an item quite like this on the agenda, but there's so much going on, and I just felt like, if we can periodically kind of update you on some of the projects. I know we get questions sometimes on individual projects, so I want to kind of see if we can routinely get this in our agenda. My first disclaimer, like I also mentioned in the staff report, is that this is very dynamic. Projects, statuses have changed in the last couple weeks, even since this was printed. So I just want to, make that disclaimer that, we might go back and see that a project status has changed really, really quickly. And also, this doesn't cover every funding source. I already made a joke about NAB saying to me that we should cover everything, but there's way too much. Like, we've got a lot going on. So I'm trying to highlight, maybe the top kind of 5 programs that are happening right now, but so go easy on me. I don't know the status of every single project and, every single program, but I do my best. So a couple of the programs I have highlighted here. The first one is CMAQ that you hear about a lot, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality. It's one of those fun programs because MCAG gets a direct allocation and selects projects for it. We are approaching the end of the fiscal year for securing CMAQ funds in the region for this fiscal year. And on page 197, there's a list of the 7 projects that were scheduled for this year. I'll just say it's noted in the staff report that there's a kind of a timeline that Caltrans is frantically trying to get these projects approved, like in July. So the 3 projects that say submitted have been approved within the last week or so. So Caltrans has been working like crazy to get these done. There's actually something we'll talk about at another point where when the state performs well, in August, there's a process called August redistribution, and the state gets rewarded for high levels of project delivery, and even MCAG should get like bonus funds for that. So the ones that say submitted have already been obligated. Obligate is the term used for project approved, ready to go. I don't know if everyone uses that term, but we do that in the transportation world. There are 2 projects with Merced. We've been working with the city. They're going to be delayed till next funding year. They can work on those in the fall. That's the plan there. A couple of other highlighted programs under the Federal Transit Administration. There was actually just an FTIP Amendment 11 that you guys approved to program some bus and bus facilities money for TJPA. Also, TJPA is working on a grant application for a program called 5310. A lot of the FTA acronyms start with the number 53, but it's services specifically for seniors and individuals with disabilities. So they'll be putting that in later this month. Also on the consent calendar was the approval of transit projects for the State of Good Repair program under the Transportation Development Act. There are a lot of different funding sources under the Transportation Development Act. You all are very familiar with LTF, or the Local Transportation Fund. We talk about that probably a couple times a year, and we'll talk about that on another agenda as well. The Regional Surface Transportation Program, your agencies are all going through the process of claiming those funds this year. And those are very flexible. They're probably used on rehab and things in your cities, direct to the cities on a number of projects. And then, of course, our Measure V. At some point, I think very soon, we'll have, a staff report going through the Measure V projects and, getting updates on them when we work with their agencies. Right now, we're working with all of the agencies on the current call for projects. The regional project committees will be getting scheduled, I think, late September-ish, so we haven't set that yet. If you don't have it on your calendar, it's because they're not quite set yet, but those projects are in. We'll be reviewing them, and they'll be presented to the board in October. One other quick one I wanted to mention, it's big news in the state, is that there's a new transit program, or there's a big infusion of transit funding for a program called Zero Emission Transit Capital Program, ZETSIP or something like that. But it's a direct allocation to regions, and a back of the napkin calculation that came out in the state shows 30-ish million over 4 years coming to Merced County. That was a back of the napkin thing that CalCog put together, but it'll be a very large amount coming to this county that will be for rail and transit projects. So you'll be hearing more about that in the future, about how that will be allocated by the board. So that was a little long-winded, but that's what I have for today. Any questions? Happy to take questions.
Are there any questions?
Thank you. Really quickly, back to the CMAQ. Just refresh my memory on the programs, on the two that were delayed requests for funding. That money can carry over year from year. So we had 3.8 allocated. It looks like submitted. We have, or excuse me, obligated now. We have 1.5 roughly, and you still have almost 2 million in those two last projects. So does that money will carry over to the next fiscal year?
Yes, it does.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. All right, item 8C is a staff presentation on the draft guidelines for MCAG's Regional Early Action Planning REAP 2.0 grant program, and I'll turn it over to Xavier. I was going to say, you don't look like Meg.
I'm not Meg. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So this item is to inform the board that the draft guidelines for MCAG's 2 new grant programs utilizing REAP 2 funding are out for public review. And so just as a reminder, REAP 2 is a program administered by the state, allocating funding to MPOs with 3 main objectives: to increase infill housing, affirmatively further fair housing, and reduce vehicle miles traveled. MCAG is eligible for up to $3.9 million in formula funding and conducted outreach last fall to solicit ideas how to use the funding. Based on that outreach, this board adopted a framework outlining 2 grant programs to sub-allocate the funding. MCAG developed draft grant program guidelines for the 2 new grant programs. So the first is a local sub-allocation grant program, which has about $900,000 in over-the-counter funding available to cities and the county to implement 6th cycle housing elements, which could include activities such as rezoning, infrastructure planning, and completing environmental clearances. And the second is a regional competitive grant program, which has about $2.7 million in funding available. This program is focused on implementation projects, and there would be a competitive application process. The draft guidelines for the local sub-allocation and regional competitive grant programs are included as attachments to the staff report, and they were also provided to the REAP work group for review. The state has also completed its review of the draft guidelines and did not have any comments. The draft guidelines were released on August 15th for a 30-day public review period. At the close of the public review period on September 15th, MCAG will finalize the guidelines and bring them back to this board in October for adoption and release of the call for applications. Again, this is just an informational item to let the board know that the draft guidelines are currently out for public review and comment. So with that, we'd be happy to take any questions or comments on the guidelines now, or as always, please feel free to reach out to us at any time. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Any comments or questions from the public? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to item 9. This moves us into Transit Joint Powers Authority agenda with 1 action item. Item 9A is a request to adopt a resolution authorizing the Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 grant application submittal for a vehicle replacement project. Nav.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, directors. This is a grant submittal for FTA 5310 designated for mobility for seniors and individuals with disabilities. The grant provides support to local government authorities with the goal to improve mobility for those in need. TJPA's objective is to replace 9 cutaways. The cost is about $1.2 million for these buses. What we're going to be seeking is $630,000 of FTA 5310, and the remaining funds will come from other various funds. If awarded for fiscal year 22-23, staff will be able to reduce the capital reserve by $630,000. These buses are set to meet its life expectancy in 2025. This grant process is about a 2-year process. So by the time these buses expire, we'll be able to get this grant going. So that's it.
All right. It was the fastest report we've had yet. Good job.
Well, I mean, we follow Blake and obviously Meg, but Xavier did a great job. So, you know.
All right. Are there any questions from the board? Yeah.
So we already have these budgeted, and so if we go after this grant, then
So these buses haven't been budgeted in our budget. It's in our 25-26 year plan, right?
Okay.
So it's out there, but we want to get. The process of this grant is very, very, very hard. Like, you know, they ask for every little thing. Like the county's emergency plan, our operator's emergency plan, our maintenance plan, like it's probably stacked like this already with the application. So if we don't get it this year, they'll give us comments back, and then we can tidy it up and submit again for the same process for next year.
and then when would we find out in this cycle? So if we
February of 20.
February is when we would find out whether we get it or not.
So usually when we buy buses, we piggyback off of CalAct. With this process, you have to work with Caltrans, and so we have to go through the whole process. And usually a procurement process takes anywhere from 6 to 8 months. So, you know, that puts us into the following fiscal year, and then the order of the buses will put us another 6 to 8 months. So that's 2025.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. Yeah.
Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Nav, I've learned the hard way never to second guess you, but the last paragraph of your discussion made me pause. You're telling us that it costs $1.26 million to buy the 9 cutaways, but then you'd say that the grant request is only going to be for half of that.
Right.
So is that like it's 3rd and 10, we need 10 yards, you're going to throw a 5-yard pattern? I mean, why aren't we asking for 1.26?
Because to be competitive in this funding, because it's only $22 million, and we're competing with the rest of the state. To be competitive and get something out of it, it's better to ask for half, and so they can always, you know, say that they made this dollar go longer, right? So instead of saying they bought buses for this amount, now they could say they did this much for this funding. So that's why. It's to be more competitive in the grant process. Basically, they can boast their chest, basically say that $22 million was able to buy, I don't know, $100 million worth of buses, right? That's what it is with federal government and state government.
So again, I mean, I trust you implicitly, but then how do you find the other half of the money for the 9?
So we have SGR money, which is state SB1 funds. Then we also have LC top funds and capital reserve funds. So we can't use federal with federal money. I was trying to, but they wouldn't allow us.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Here we have a motion by Director Silvera. Is there a second? Second by Director McDaniel. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. There are no TJPA discussion items, so we will move on to the Regional Waste Management agenda. Item number 11A is a request to approve fiscal year 22-23 budget amendment number 1 to move $4,900,000 in excess operating revenue to the capital improvement projects budget. And Nav, you're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, this is to move $4.9 million of excess operating revenues to to our capital improvement plan. It's 4 projects that we're going to be moving the funds to. So the projects are $3.2 million of the 4.9 will be going to our Highway 59 infrastructure project phase 1. And then $900,000 will be going to our infrastructure project permitting design and construction management. $600,000 will be going towards our Billy Wright future cell expansion, and the remaining $200,000 will be going to expansion of the CEM trailers. If you've ever been to our landfill, right after our administrative building, there's 2 trailers there which take in mattresses, TVs, and any electronics. Currently, the trailers that we have, it's hard to maneuver with bigger objects like a queen-size bed, a king-size bed, big TVs. Forklifts have a hard time maneuvering in there, and there's been incidents where the forklift got stuck, and we had, it's unsafe for the staff. And so we're looking to provide another trailer for this. So,
and I do just want to add, when we're speaking about excess revenue, this is from the most immediate previous fiscal year that we are working to close out the books. Excess revenues typically generated. It's not uncommon for us to have excess revenue because we do have some agreements for services that we bring in material, or they might be short-term agreements from out of the area that we bring material. So I know this is something every year we have some amount of excess revenue, and it's typically because these are kind of extra contracts or agreements that create revenue for the agency that are not necessarily recognized in the budget because they are either temporary or occur outside of kind of it's not revenue we count on. It's revenue that is optionally created through other service agreements that we can have, bringing in material from other ways. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, unless there's something additional in there that I'm not factoring.
I was going to mention, I did receive a call today from a director. Basically, how come we don't pay down our bonds with this excess revenue? The reason why is when the bondholder holds the bonds, they're guaranteed a specific dollar amount, so we can't pay these bonds off in an earlier amount because these bondholders are guaranteed the investment they're making a return on them. So that's why we can't pay off the bonds earlier.
James, please come and correct me if I got that wrong. Okay.
I was the one who called about paying off the bonds earlier. Now, do we know a breakdown of that additional excess, I'm going to call it excess revenue? What percentage of it came from Billy Wright versus Highway 59?
I do not know that on top of my head. I could get that information for you. What we do is when I do these budget amendments, I just take the total revenues minus expenses. But I didn't go into that much detail because just.
But it still comes.
Well, I think majority of the costs came. So I want to say about 60% from 59 and the remaining 40 from Billy Wright.
Just looking at the projects, and looks like 95% are going to Highway 59 and 5% are going to Billy Wright.
We just got done with that $2.3 million project on the west side for a new sky house project, and another $2 million for a cell expansion. We spend money and
Yes, thank you, Pat, for that.
I don't want to get into tip for that, but 59 does take more resources in as well. So, yes.
That's all I had.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
I do have a question, though. 4.9 million is a lot of money. Was there anything that stood out? I mean, was there some huge dollar amounts that were?
So we did have some, special cleanup, on the west side, east side, importations on the west side.
The Oak Fire.
Yeah,
the
Oak
flood
Fire.
debris.
Yep. Yeah. Plus, we charge Gustine more money now.
Well, we're charging everybody more money. But okay, I just didn't.
Yeah, there's some events that happen, and plus importation on the west side as well.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, any comments or questions from the public? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, since I have both of you guys up here, I had a couple commercial haulers tell me that right now, out at the 59, that they're sharing one of the lanes with the general public, and it's slowing them up.
So, go ahead.
What is going on is we've been extremely busy the last few weeks.
Right. James, can you talk to the mic, please?
Yep. We have moved our active tipping area down into cell 6B2. So it's a different road we're going down into. The issue is we've had a lot of transfer trailers coming in from Foster Farms, Baker. Those trucks take up more room in the lane. And so what happens is then we've got public vehicles backed up. The outermost right-hand lane is our RFID lane. Only those vehicles can use that lane. Depending on how many trucks are in line, oftentimes we'll have the scale house go out and try to separate out the jurisdiction packer trucks because we can get them in and out faster. Okay. This morning, we actually stopped Foster Farms and Baker and held them off to the side so that we could get everybody through early this morning, and then routed them down. We're kind of in the introductory stages down in 6B2, where we're trying to set up different disposal areas. And once we have that going, it'll go a little bit faster.
Okay. They just asked, I didn't have an answer for them, and I said that I had this meeting, and I just bring it up.
Yeah.
Very good. Thanks.
James, just to clarify, we're talking about two potential places where the kind of congestion can happen at the scale house and then down at the actual active cell. Okay, just want to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Director Nagy, second by Director Pereira. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. 11B is a request to authorize the Executive Director to enter into a contract for the construction of Highway 59 landfill facility improvements in the amount of $8,938,691 with the selected vendor TBS Contractors. James.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. This is one of the projects that really drew me to this position 7 months ago. The ability to take these projects that have been in the pipeline for 10 or 12 or more years. It's really satisfying to get them to the point where we're ready to see things change on the ground. A few of you have been out to the landfill recently. You may have noticed we have some rebar with tape around it out in the area, out in front of the admin building. That's where some of these facilities are going to go. And it's been helpful to our staff out there to start kind of imagining in their mind, oh yeah, there's going to be a building there. So in summary, the action here is to authorize the Executive Director to enter into a contract for what we're calling the Infrastructure Project Phase 1. That basically covers our maintenance shop, the recyclable materials transfer facility, which will be a 15,000 square foot building. The maintenance shop is about 4,500 square feet. It's about 3 times the size of our existing building. Can we go ahead and, oh, I've got the clicker. Does it work? I think. There we go. Picture on the left there with the truck backed in, that's our maintenance shop. That was a pole barn 50 years ago that they then scavenged fiberglass and metal to give it walls and a roof. And that's the good side. So just, kind of what are we replacing here? The picture on the right is our current recyclable materials transfer area. It's just broken, separated by the bins. That material's out in the open. Obviously with wind causes quite a bit of litter issues. You can see the guy there in the yellow shirt, he was raking and bagging up trash that was outside the bin area there. But here is what the new maintenance shop is going to look like. It'll have 2 roll-up doors. What you're seeing is the east side exposure. On the opposite side, there's 2 more doors leading out. The windows you see there are the mechanics office and break room. And this facility will also have a crane mounted in the ceiling for use on the equipment. So rather than being out in the dirt and the mud trying to work on the equipment, they can actually bring almost all of our heavy equipment into this shop and work on it in a controlled environment. This is a rendering of the recyclable materials transfer building. It's going to have 6 doors. You see the one there on what is actually the south elevation. There's another one on the north side. That's where the transfer trucks will pull in and through. The 4 side doors where the Packer trucks can back in, or members of the public can back in. On the far side of the building, we'll have those similar bin areas where the recyclable materials, cardboard, plastic, glass is dumped, loaded into the transfer trucks, and then taken down to Fresno to carts to be processed. Just by way of a few numbers on this project, the engineer's estimate was 8.902. The low bid came in at 8.938 million. That's within 0.4% of the engineer's bid. The other bid we received was slightly higher at $9,099,000 and change. Again, that was only about 1.5% above the low bid. So we felt fairly confident that these were two solid bids, as close as they were together and as close as they were to the engineer's estimate. At this point, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain that.
Okay, are there any questions?
So is that the end of your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So as I was reading through it, this isn't just for the shop and the recycled tray.
Right. Yeah, there's a number of other items along with this, including a new fuel storage and dispensing area. Our current fuel storage tanks are outdated. The new area will have a 12,000-gallon red dye diesel tank and a split 1,000-gallon regular unleaded fuel and diesel tank. So total capacity of 14,000 gallons of fuel. In addition, we'll have our new household hazardous waste area, which will provide more of a one-stop shop. Our goal with all of this project is to have all of the materials that we divert from the landfill, things like appliances, tires, carpet, electronics, household hazardous waste, all within the same general area of the landfill, so that when the customers come in, particularly the public, they'll come in, they'll take a turn right past the existing admin building, pull into our HHW area, be able to dispose of material there, pull around, drop off tires, appliances, anything else they have, and then exit the site. It'll be much easier for us to control issues of safety and keeping the material straightened out. As part of all this, there's quite a bit of infrastructure. We're putting down about 4 acres of asphalt, about 1 acre of concrete, 1,000 feet of curbing, sidewalk, all of the utilities needed for these buildings and the future admin building. All those utilities will also be set in place, so we won't have to do that once we get to the admin building in a year or 2 or 3.
So I guess as I was reading through it, when you look at the fiscal impact, we budgeted $6.6 million in capital improvements for this project, what it says. And then we're relying on the budget amendment that we just did before of 4.9?
3.9 goes into this project, yes.
4.9 total, 3.9. So I guess what would have happened if we didn't, we ran into a year where we had some circumstances with the Oak Fire, with debris removal from the floods that increased our revenue. What would have happened had we not had that money to be able to transfer in?
Unfortunately, we would have probably had to cut out some of this scope and do it later at a higher cost.
Okay. I guess I get it. I get that these things need to be done. I mean, I'm thankful that you, in your presentation, you actually showed me pictures. I was kind of looking for pictures in our staff report just to kind of give me an idea. I'm a little more familiar with the Billy Wright landfill than I am with the Highway 59 one, but we're spending a lot of money, and I appreciate that we're getting these projects done, because I think we're going to be in a different world once we get done paying off these bonds, and we, at least by one person's opinion, think that we're not going to be doing as much importing as we have to, and it's kind of, so we go into it with a project that, with the engineer's estimates, already said it was going to be $9 million, and we bid it out, and we've had to rely on money that we didn't account for to be able to make up that shortfall. And listen, it makes sense to me if you're going to be putting infrastructure in the ground, and we're talking about a new admin building, putting that stuff in one time now and having it ready to go versus doing this and then having to come tear pretty much new stuff up to put in additional things. So just want to keep that in mind, that I appreciate that we're getting these things done, but we're already going into knowing that a project's going to cost more than what we actually had to be able to spend.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I will entertain a motion. Okay, we have a motion by Director Pereira, second by Director Nagy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, there are any discussion items for RWA, so we'll move on to other reports. Item 13 is the Executive Director's Report. Stacy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of items to share with you. As Kiana and Chris mentioned, we are working to shore up the plans for Director Tavares's visit to Merced County on August 31st. Nav and I drove the intended plan and realized we've got to shave a bit off because we don't have him for an entire day. So we're going back to work on that, but making sure that we're putting the best foot forward. All of you have received, and many of you have responded to let me know whether or not you'll be joining us for lunch. So please let me know as you can here, hopefully within the next week, so we can get the head count ready. I also want to mention that I had the opportunity to meet the director and the CalSTA secretary, Tokso Mashakin. Maybe it was last week. It seems like it was a blur. It was last week at the Women in Transportation dinner. Chair Pedroso joined us there, and most of our, if not all, almost all of our planning team as well, and had an opportunity to kind of give him an early introduction. I told him that we were going to wow him, so I set us up. So we've got a lot to achieve, but a really good opportunity to talk with him about what we're going to be doing when he's visiting. And I'll say that between his visit with us, he and the secretary at dinner in Fresno last week, they were visiting with TCAG and Tulare last week as well. And I believe the director is coming to meet with Madera. Either they just have or they're going to. That is between that and having the chair of the CTC from the Valley. Director Tavares has some roots in the Valley, and now our executive director for the California Transportation Commission with Valley roots. We're really, I think, getting a lot of really good attention. And so as organized as we are, and I think having a narrative that we can all be speaking to, as Kiana mentioned, that, you know, yes, we have passenger rail investments that are just going to be, you know, game changers. Yes, we've got this history of bike and ped investments, and we have more coming. But it's a three-legged stool. It's three parts of a whole. You still need those critical highway and local street and road infrastructure to make all of that work for our economy and the state's economy, quite frankly. So that's the narrative that we're pushing. But you'll hear more from me, and you'll see some of the material that we're providing the director as we get a little closer. I do just want to, you know, I don't say this enough, just as a reminder that we have free transit countywide through September. Jose, through September. I don't know why I can't. It's on my email chain. It says, if you want a banner for your email that says free bus, you know, the service is free through September. If you ever notice on our email, we have that big bright banner. Let us know, and you can add that because it's countywide. And also thanks to a nudge from Supervisor Director Pereira giving me a heads up about a micro grant opportunity through the Clean Air Coalition. We were able to get one thanks to Mary Michael's overnight work of getting an application in, and we hope that we'll be receiving that micro grant to do some free fares and an outreach event with Castle Family Health Centers and the bus in October. So more to come there. Reminder that we do not have any meetings in September, but you will be hearing from me about getting those East and West Side Measure V Regional Project Committee meetings scheduled. I have been holding off on those because we are still meeting with the technical work groups. We are coming up, I think, next week on our second round of meetings with them, so that we can get as much worked out and provide options to the committees when it's time to meet in late September. And then I think, just as a heads up, some of the things to looking ahead, since we are going to be in October, it's probably going to be a pretty hefty meeting, being that we don't have a meeting in September. And two items that I anticipate at this point, barring any changes to any major components of this work between now and then, the draft implementation plan for Measure V, should those technical work group meetings wrap up, the East and West elected groups can meet According to our implementation plan schedule, we should have a draft plan ready to be released to the public at the October meeting, as well as we're targeting that meeting to present you all with some good information from the EV rollout plan, the zero emission bus rollout plan is, I guess what is not EV, it's ZEB, the ZEB rollout plan, and that's the analysis that's underway right now, looking at our systems compatibility with transitioning to either fully electric, fully hydrogen, or a combination of a hydrogen and electric, and what that means for fleet replacement, infrastructure costs, the suitability for the types of services we provide. So there's a lot of data there that we've already started to see, and it really starts to develop the path forward of the policy decisions that will need to be made. And I'll just give you a heads up that from a staff level, and with the board's previous investments in electric, we could really see a path where we are developing both hydrogen and electric. So more information will be coming to you in October on that. So I'm going to do a quick, if I missed anything that is just burning, nope, I don't see anyone. Okay, good. My job is done. Thank you, and enjoy your month off in September.
Thank you. So we'll go on to director's reports, and we'll start with Director Nagy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to report, I attended the California Van Pool Annual Retreat in Sacramento last week. I learned a lot, actually. And they have over 1,000 van pools in the state of California. 90-something% are migrant workers, and about 10% are correctional officers. And that makes up for all of them. They have 420 electric vehicles on order right now. They'll be phasing out their gas vehicles. But there's some big challenges with that, because the farm workers go out in the middle of fields to work, and there's not charging stations out there. So there's some things that they're going to have to do. They've talked about these battery packs that you could put on the back of them, but then they're worried about if there's a rear end collision, will that ignite a fire, things like that. So, but the one thing that I did learn that they're very proud of is that they just surpassed 1 billion miles saved. Wow. So that's quite a feat. And other than that, we won't be off next month because we'll be in Washington with the Regional Policy Committee and then in Sacramento for the Cal Cities. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Maybe they could get that on our infrastructure, charging infrastructure, to figure out how to put some of those out in the middle of those fields.
No report, thank you. Director Naran. Director Yanez.
Oh, I didn't know we're jumping around. Okay. So first, I want to thank Director Nagy for taking one for the team and filling in for me at that riveting Calvans event. So thank you for that. I want to thank everyone here involving with Measure V. The city of Las Vegas currently is having 37 new ADA sidewalk corners put into our city limits. Wow. And so thank you for that. It's one of the largest projects we've seen in a long time. Our city is also committed to doing several street improvement projects going on. So I'm going to apologize to everybody who's trying to get across Las Vegas, not just Pacheco, but everywhere else now, because of the number of miles of streets that we're doing. And our first focus is anywhere around schools. So anywhere around schools, we had a commitment to get those done before the start of the school year, and they finished every single one of those projects. And so I'm really happy about that, and we're focusing on other streets in the city as well. And then he is not here, but I will invite Director Smith if you want to fill in for Mayor Serrato. We're going to open, we just renovated a basketball court at 7th and Pacheco, and this is open 24 hours a day to people, outdoor basketball court we just renovated. And so normally Matt and I would get together and play some basketball. If you want to fill in on September 9th at the ribbon cutting, you're more than welcome to, if you're going over the hill. If not, I'll reach out to him. And then again, just some of the things going on in Las Vegas. We have a ton of community events going on. We partnered with the school district at our community center. So our wall at the community center is going to be painted in a mural with every mascot in the city of all of our schools. So it's pretty cool they're doing that. So that's all I have.
Okay, Director Pereira. Director McDaniel.
I'd just like to comment on staff's reports tonight. You guys really knew your stuff, and especially Nav's answer back to Director Silvera. Very nice.
Director Nelson.
Well, it's been a fun meeting. And I haven't been in the middle of it. That's even better. I just want to say that I told you I was going on the arts to Yosemite last month and took two of our grandchildren, and we had a good time. And I enjoyed it because I could actually see the scenery without having to worry about driving off the side of the road into the river. Yes, yes. And I got a nap on the way back, too, so that was even better. So it was good. It was good.
Cool. Okay, Director Silvera. All right, I have a couple quick things really. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I did. Yeah, I got it under control. All right.
There's an over-under.
Yeah, I gotcha. A couple really quick things. I know Director McDaniel also had the opportunity to ride the bus to Turlock a couple weeks ago with Mayor Serrato. I did as well, and that's going to be a big focus. I want to make that a big focus is, how can we be really efficient, more efficient with our bus service and make sure that we're getting people on there and moving around. So I've already talked to Stacy about it, and that's something that I really want to work on significantly. So I'd like to maybe do a retreat like we were supposed to do, or just have a study session on some ideas and brainstorm some ideas for the bus. I think that would be really beneficial to this area. Also, and I would encourage anybody to try that bus in the morning. It's very efficient. It gets you there on time. It gets you back, and it's a really good service. The last thing I wanted to mention, and I told Stacy this yesterday. So by my house, there's some bus stops, and there was a guy walking in the middle of the street, and he tried to flag down a bus, and the bus driver stopped, and she said, "Look, it's not safe for you to come around the bus and get on, but if you cross the street where it's safe, I'll pull over and I'll wait for you." And so the guy labored over there, and she pulled over and waited for him. Had to have been like 5 minutes, but it was really cool to see her do that because it wasn't a planned stop. So I just really wanted to shout her out. And, I think they do a really good job. And so sometimes we don't highlight all the positives, and I think that's something that we should do. So with that, since we will not be meeting in September, the next meeting of the board will be held on October 19th, 2023 at 3 p.m. here at the Merced County Board of Supervisors chambers. And with that, I'll adjourn the meeting at 4:31. Thank you.